Let's move on to another story. The death toll continues to rise in Louisville, Kentucky, after that UPS cargo plane left a trail of fire when it crashed shortly after takeoff yesterday.
Our fatality count is now up to 11. I expect it to reach 12, possibly, by the end of the day. And there are a handful of other people that we're still searching for that we hope weren't on site and that we hear were somewhere else.
So officials believe the plane's left wing caught fire and an engine fell off before the crash. An explosion then engulfed the aircraft and spread to nearby businesses, leaving the trail of destruction. The jet and 3 people aboard left from the main UPS distribution hub in Louisville. They were on their way to Honolulu, a trip which required, of course, a significant amount of jet fuel. Crews have now turned to recovery efforts and don't expect to find anyone else alive in the area. As you remember from last evening, Sarah Galashian has been following this story closely. Sarah, obviously an investigation going on. What do we know now about what happened here?
Well, I mean, let me start. As always happens in cases like this, it seems there are recordings that start to surface from CTV footage and from dash cam videos. And when we are looking at what has happened here, and we look at the overall aerial, you can see there are a number of parked trucks sort of near to the end of that runway, and that's where some of this footage is coming from. And I do want to play with a warning that it is, the footage that I'm about to show it's graphic and it's violent in nature, but what it does is it illustrates just how fast and how violent this was when this UPS plane came to a crash. Let's put it up. It shows you really what has happened in Louisville last night. This was recorded, like I say, from a vehicle dash camera parked near the end of the runway, and it shows the cargo jet coming down really on a sharp angle and at incredible speed. The National Safety Board, National Transportation Safety Board, is investigating. What they're saying is that the left engine detached before this explosive crash occurred after the end of that runway. The plane hitting a petroleum recycling plant and as well an auto parts shop. And the owner of that auto parts shop actually has spoken about this tragedy that has befallen the community and certainly his own business itself. And I want to play you what he had to say.
Never been in a war zone, but I would have to imagine it is what a war zone looks like. All of our buildings in the path of the airplane are destroyed. I believe that people didn't do something they should have done, which means this was an avoidable incident. And that, to me, does not sit right and is upsetting.
NTSB investigators say that the debris field stretches more than half a mile. That debris was flown even further than that. They are asking anyone who finds in that area, finds debris in their yard, to call them. They want all the clues that they can have. To that, they have managed to locate the black boxes, and while they have suffered some damage from heat, they are believed to still be intact and be able to provide the information that they normally would, the voice recording. To the idea of voice recording, we often do hear air traffic control chatter with the pilot, and in this case, Ian, it is really just, it's completely garbled and nothing can really be gleaned from it.
So, I mean, it's not hard to imagine this would have such a deep impact on the community, the size of the fire, the places that were engulfed, but also the business that this jet was attached to.
Yes, now UPS. I mean, it's been described by local politicians, really, Louisville as kind of a UPS town. Residents in Louisville have been, for the last, almost 24 hours now, worried about further explosions and as well as air quality. And there's been testing of the air quality and water. And at this point, the water is certainly safe and power is being restored. A congressman at one of these many press conferences that have been held did talk about the scene and what the community has endured. And I think it's worth listening to that.
The skies over Louisville looked apocalyptic last night. People scared all over our community. Debris falling, ash falling, people sheltering in place. My family, one of those families. But what the three of us just went and witnessed at the site, it's like a scene out of a Terminator movie. It is burned and mangled wreckage beyond anything I've ever seen. The smells, the sights. These are things that are not going to escape us when we close our eyes tonight.
Now, we have heard from UPS, the company, and they talk about Louisville and the importance of it to the company. That airport, the Muhammad Ali Airport, is really a hub for UPS. It is where is the home base for their airline. It is, well, the company's largest shipping hub is there, and thousands of people in that community are employed by UPS. And this plane crash as well is going to have an effect even further afield. I mean, we're talking about a company that is delivering packages really right around the world. And we're not just talking about letters and things that have been purchased online, but the NTSB investigator talked about the fact that in some cases these are medicines, life-saving medicines that need to be distributed. So the investigators are very conscious of that. They have managed to reopen one runway at the airport, but a second one is still under investigation, given, of course, the footage you've seen.
Okay, Sarah, thank you very much. So let's get some more analysis on this crash with aviation journalist and pilot Mark Miller. So based on what you've heard and what we know so far, what do you think caused this crash?
I mean, we know that there's an engine sitting on the runway, and the airplane, clearly there was some sort of catastrophic failure, either of the pylon holding that engine in place or the engine itself, and it shook itself loose. So investigators will want to figure that out. By the way, a catastrophic failure in an engine, the engine shouldn't be able to shake itself loose. So this is quite reminiscent, Ian, of 1979, a crash of a DC-10, which is a close relative to this MD-11.
This is in Chicago?
Chicago, 1979. And again, the number one engine, the left-hand engine, came off, damaged the wing as it departed the airplane. The airplane actually got quite high.
I think I remember it.
You remember that
yeah.
very famous picture that was on the front page of the Chicago Times 2 days later.
Now, here's the thing, though. That was 1979.
Yeah.
If there's anything great about the aviation industry is it learns from its failures and mistakes. How could something like that happen again so many years later?
Well, we don't know that it's the same thing yet.
Yeah.
And, but there are some parallels here. That airplane had been in heavy maintenance. The engine had been removed in 1979 and put back on. The airplane had done about 15 revenue flights. Well, this airplane had also just come out of heavy maintenance. I was trying to figure out how many flights it did. I was able to count 12, but I think there may have been 3 or 4 more. So roughly the same number of flights. So if there was something wrong with the way they put the engine back on after they inspected it at maintenance, you know, to me, it's surprising to know the airplane would have flown that long before there was a failure. We also know that there was some sort of a delay. When we look at the ADS-B data, the data that comes from the airplane that's transmitted up to satellites to see where it is, the ADS-B data starts, and there's an 80-minute delay before it starts its takeoff roll. So that's being attributed to some sort of maintenance check, some sort of maintenance delay. So that's why the NTSB today announced that they have a maintenance team that's going to take a major focus in this investigation.
I've never seen a trail of fire. You don't see it in this shot, but you do in the others just before a crash. I think I know why, but explain it for me.
So the airplane is fully fueled. Mm-hmm. It's very heavy. Fully fueled for that flight to Hawaii, as you mentioned. It's quite a long flight. And they also hit fuel recycling stations, somewhere that I think they make biofuels and things like that. So they hit those. In fact, there's the tanks there. You can see one of the tanks is missing. So that also contributed to it. One of the problems the investigators are going to have, and we saw this in a crash in 2000 in Sacramento, also a cargo plane crashed off the end of the runway there. It went into an auto parts wrecking yard. And investigators were really challenged to figure out which parts were airplane parts and which parts were car parts. They look very similar. Of course, the scene is superheated, been through a big fire.
Yeah. You're a pilot.
Yeah.
And so imagine what those pilots went through if, I guess we know, the engine did for some reason separate upon takeoff. You're doomed.
Well, you're not doomed.
No?
You know, I fly multi-engine, so, you know, we're trained to be able to manage the airplane, to push the airplane, the nose over, so we don't get going too slow on one engine. We have to be able to climb away from the runway on one engine. This airplane had 2 other engines. So the question right now, we can see there's a fire here, and if you actually watch the video when it rolls, there's a little puff of smoke that comes out the tail. That's the number, I don't know if it's the number 3 or number 2 engine, but it's the engine mounted on the tail. We think that it may have ingested some material from the wing and from the engine as it came off. The shot that I thought was, you know, incredible was seeing the engine cowlings and the actual engine core laying on the side of the runway, which confirms that that engine came off the airplane.
So these pilots were trying to keep this plane aloft.
Absolutely.
During this entire time.
Yeah, they had gone past what we call V1. That's kind of the point of no return. Not enough runway to stop. They've got to go flying at that point, and they're hoping that they have enough energy and the ability to manage the airplane and return it for a landing.
And so why do you think in this case, any idea why they couldn't? Well, one of the things may be damage to the second of 3 engines.
Yeah, and also there might be damage to the wing. That's what happened to the DC-10 in 1979. And we just don't know. We'll know by listening to the cockpit voice recorder and by looking at the data from the airplane what happened. And I mean, this all happened very quickly. You know, if the engine detached and it was still running, the engine will outrun the airplane, come up around the top of the airplane. It goes flying by itself. Well, if it does that, does it hit the airplane? Does it cause some damage? We just don't know.
Always nice having your analysis and guidance on these stories, Mark. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ian.
Mark Miller, an aviation journalist and pilot. And the mayor of Louisville, Craig Greenberg, has just made a statement. I'm deeply saddened to share that the death toll has risen to 12, with several individuals still accounted for. No one should face tragedy alone. Please take a moment to hug your loved ones and check on your neighbors. We'll continue providing resources and support to everyone affected by this heartbreaking event.